Welcome back. Stop for a moment and really focus, because what you're about to see is not just another old coin. This is the 1945 Mercury Dime, officially known as the Winged Liberty Head Dime, struck in the final moments of World War II, when history itself was holding its breath. This coin is 90% silver and 10% copper, heavy with both metal and meaning, and the one you're looking at is worn, dirty, heavily circulated, and marked by time. At first glance, it feels ordinary, almost forgotten, the kind of dime most people would toss aside without a second thought. But this coin doesn't need shine to be powerful. Its value is hidden in its journey, its survival, and the silent story pressed into its surface. The year 1945 was not just another date on a calendar. It was the end of a global war, a moment when America shifted from survival to rebuilding, and this Mercury Dime lived through that transition hand to hand. It paid for newspapers announcing victory, coffee shared between soldiers and families, and small purchases that kept everyday life moving forward. Millions were struck, but only a fraction survived decades of circulation, loss, melting, and neglect. This particular dime didn't sit protected in a drawer. It worked. It moved. It endured. And that kind of survival matters deeply to collectors who understand that history leaves fingerprints money cannot hide. Look closely at the design, because it speaks in symbols most people never stop to understand. Liberty wears a winged cap, not to represent a Roman god, but to symbolize freedom of thought, speed, and resilience during uncertain times. On the reverse, the fasces stand strong, bound tightly together, with an olive branch resting beside it, power balanced by peace. These details were not decoration, they were messages to a nation under pressure. Even now, worn and softened by decades of use, those symbols remain, quietly reminding us that this coin was born in one of America's most defining moments. This Mercury Dime has passed through countless hands, rubbed against other coins, keys, and counters, absorbing the marks of everyday life. Every scratch and flattened edge tells a story of movement, not neglect. Collectors understand something most people don't: circulation is not the enemy of value. Survival is. A coin that lived a full life and still remains intact carries authenticity that no polished piece can fake. This dime wasn't hidden away, it earned its scars, and those scars are proof that it belonged to real people and real moments of history. What makes coins like this dangerous to overlook is how quietly they can hold extraordinary potential. Subtle differences in strike quality, die condition, and metal flow can separate an ordinary dime from one that collectors search for relentlessly. These details aren't obvious to the untrained eye, which is why coins like this slip through pocket change and collections unnoticed. The right person, with the right knowledge, sees something different entirely, not just silver, but rarity shaped by circumstance and time. The 1945 Mercury Dime sits at the crossroads of old America and modern America. It represents the final chapter of a legendary design that would soon be replaced, making it emotionally powerful to collectors who value endings as much as beginnings. Many were melted for silver, others lost forever, and some were damaged beyond recognition. Yet this one remains, worn but readable, tired but complete. That balance between fragility and survival is exactly what transforms a simple coin into something far more meaningful and far more valuable. People often assume value comes from perfection, but the truth is far more complex. Coins like this gain attention because they are real, untouched by modern polishing, and shaped by real circulation. Their weight feels different in the hand. Their surface tells a story no mint-state coin ever could. Collectors don't just buy metal, they buy time, memory, and authenticity. This Mercury Dime carries all three, quietly, without needing to announce itself. Imagine how many times this dime nearly disappeared forever. It could have been lost in a couch, dropped in the street, or melted down during silver rushes when people didn't care about history. Instead, it survived. It stayed whole. And now, decades later, it stands as a reminder that overlooked objects can outlast generations. That survival alone gives it power, and in the right context, that power can translate into staggering collector interest. Before you ever spend a coin like this, stop and look again. Feel its weight. Steady the edges. Notice how the design fades but never disappears. This is not just 10 cents. This is a piece of American endurance, pressed into silver, carried through war, peace, and everyday life. Coins like this don't shout their value, they wait patiently for someone who knows how to listen. The 1945 Mercury Dime proves one simple truth: fortunes aren't always shiny, and history doesn't always look impressive at first glance. Sometimes, life-changing value hides inside worn metal, carried quietly through decades until the right eyes finally recognize it. And when that moment comes, an ordinary-looking dime can suddenly become something extraordinary. Welcome back. Pause right here and take a breath, because this coin deserves your full attention. What you're looking at is the 1937 Mercury Dime, also known as the Winged Liberty Head Dime, struck in the heart of the Great Depression-era United States. It's made of 90% silver and 10% copper, heavy not just in weight but in history. This one is worn, dirty, heavily circulated, its surface softened by decades of real use. To most people, it looks like an old dime that has seen better days. But to those who understand coins, this is the kind of piece that quietly carries stories, rarity, and potential far beyond its face value. The year 1937 was a tense moment in American history. The country was still clawing its way out of economic collapse, families were careful with every cent, and money moved constantly from hand to hand. This Mercury Dime didn't sit in a collection, it worked for a living. It bought bread, newspapers, and small comforts during hard times. Every mile it traveled through pockets and cash registers left a mark, and those marks are proof that this coin survived one of the toughest eras America ever faced. The design alone makes this dime unforgettable. Liberty wears a winged cap, symbolizing freedom of thought and resilience, an idea America desperately needed during the 1930s. On the reverse, the fasces stands tall, representing strength through unity, while the olive branch promises peace. These were not random artistic choices. They were deliberate messages carved into silver for a nation trying to stay strong. Even now, worn and faded, those symbols still speak with quiet authority. This 1937 Mercury Dime has lived a long, demanding life. It rubbed against other coins, scraped across counters, and passed through countless hands. Its edges are softened, its details worn down, but it remains complete and readable. Collectors understand something most people never realize: circulation does not erase value, it creates authenticity. A coin that survived heavy use without being destroyed carries credibility, and credibility is everything in the world of serious collecting. What makes this dime dangerous to ignore is how easily it blends in. Millions were minted, yet far fewer remain today in honest circulated condition. Many were melted during silver booms, others lost forever, and countless more damaged beyond recognition. Subtle differences in strike, die condition, and metal flow can quietly elevate certain examples above the rest. These are not details you notice at a glance, which is why coins like this continue to slip through collections unnoticed. The 1937 Mercury Dime sits in the middle of the series, a period collectors study closely because it reflects mature minting techniques mixed with economic pressure. Coins from this era often show character rather than perfection. This one tells its story clearly through patterns that confirm it lived through real history, not storage. For collectors, that kind of honesty matters more than shine. It's the difference between owning metal and owning a moment in time. Silver adds another layer to this coin's quiet power. Long before people talked about inflation or metal value on social media, silver was trusted money. This dime carried real purchasing power, and it still holds intrinsic worth today. But its true appeal isn't just in silver content, it's in survival, symbolism, and the way history shaped it. Coins like this don't scream their importance. They wait patiently to be understood. Imagine how close this dime came to disappearing forever. It could have been lost in the street, melted down, or thrown away when silver prices surged. Instead, it survived. It stayed intact through war years, economic recovery, and generations of change. That survival alone gives it a gravity most modern coins will never have. Collectors recognize that gravity immediately. Before you ever dismiss a coin like this, stop and really look. Feel the weight. Trace the faded details. Notice how the design remains strong despite the wear. This isn't just 10 cents. It's a piece of American endurance pressed into silver, carried through hardship and recovery. Coins like this hold value that goes far beyond price guides and charts. The 1937 Mercury Dime proves a simple truth: life-changing value doesn't always shine. Sometimes it hides in worn metal, shaped by decades of use, waiting for the right person to recognize what others overlook. For those who understand coins, this dime is not small, not ordinary, and certainly not something to spend without thought. Welcome back. Stop for a moment and really take this in, because this coin comes from a time when every cent mattered. This is the 1930 Mercury Dime, officially called the Winged Liberty Head Dime, struck at the very edge of one of the darkest economic chapters in American history. Made of 90% silver and 10% copper, this coin carries real weight in your hand and even heavier meaning in its story. The example you're looking at is worn, dirty, heavily circulated, its surface softened by years of hard use. To most people, it looks tired and forgettable. But to those who understand coins, this is where real stories begin. The year 1930 was a turning point. The Great Depression had taken hold, jobs were disappearing, and families were counting every dime just to survive. This Mercury Dime wasn't saved as a keepsake. It worked. It passed from hand to hand, buying food, paying debts, and keeping everyday life moving forward when hope was scarce. Every scratch on this coin is evidence that it played a role in real American lives during a time when money wasn't just currency, it was survival. Look closely at the design, because it was never meant to be ordinary. Liberty wears a winged cap, symbolizing freedom of thought, speed, and resilience, ideas America desperately needed in 1930. On the reverse, the fasces stands firm, representing strength through unity, balanced by the olive branch, a quiet promise of peace. These symbols weren't decorative. They were messages. Even now, worn down by circulation, they still speak clearly to anyone willing to look. This 1930 Mercury Dime has lived a full, demanding life. It slid across wooden counters, clinked against other silver coins, and spent years inside pockets and purses. Its edges are smooth, its details softened, but it remains whole. Collectors understand something many people don't: a coin that survives heavy circulation without being destroyed earns credibility. This dime wasn't protected. It endured. And endurance gives it character that no untouched coin can replicate. What makes this coin especially dangerous to overlook is how quietly it blends in. Millions were struck, but far fewer survived decades of circulation, silver melting, and neglect. During later years, many Mercury Dimes were melted down for their silver content alone, erased from history forever. The ones that remain in honest circulated condition carry a kind of scarcity that can't be recreated. Subtle differences in strike, die wear, and metal flow can turn one worn dime into something collectors search for relentlessly. The 1930 Mercury Dime sits at the early heart of the series, a period collectors study closely because minting pressure and economic stress often left subtle anomalies behind. Coins from this era were produced quickly to meet demand, and perfection was not the priority. That urgency sometimes left behind small irregularities that only trained eyes can detect today. These hidden details are why some coins quietly leap from pocket change to collector treasure. Silver itself gives this coin a timeless power. Long before digital money or plastic cards, silver was trusted wealth. This dime carried real purchasing power, and it still carries intrinsic value today. But its true appeal goes far beyond metal. It's about history, survival, and the human stories pressed into its surface. Coins like this don't need to shine to matter. They carry their importance silently. Think about how many times this dime nearly vanished. It could have been lost in a gutter, dropped during hard times, or melted when silver prices rose. Instead, it survived wars, economic recovery, and generations of change. That survival is not luck, it's rarity formed by time. Collectors recognize that immediately. A coin that lived through the worst and still exists carries a presence modern coins simply cannot match. Before you ever dismiss a coin like this, stop and really look. Feel the weight of the silver. Study the faded design. Notice how Liberty still stands proud despite decades of wear. This isn't just 10 cents. It's a physical piece of American resilience, carried through hardship and uncertainty, preserved by chance and endurance. The 1930 Mercury Dime proves one powerful truth: extraordinary value doesn't always look impressive at first glance. Sometimes it hides in worn silver, shaped by history, waiting patiently for someone who understands what they're holding. For the right collector, this coin isn't small at all, it's a survivor, and survivors often carry the greatest value of all.